spending time with her husband, friends, family, including her 12 grandchildren. In her spare time, she connects and celebrates with the women involved in motorsports, taking you behind the wall about their journey of life, racing, and how they juggle everything to make it all work. Welcome to Racing Girls Rock Podcast. Strap in, window nets up, the pedals are down, and when the green flag drops, we go.
Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with Racing Girls Rock Podcast, sponsored by the International Women's Motorsports Association. And today, our other sponsor is RacingJunk.com. So if you haven't checked out Racing Junk while you've been home sitting on your couch, today would be a good day to do that. They have lots of interesting things for sale, and they change every day. So get on RacingJunk.com and check them out. So today, my special guest, it's an honor for me to have her on. I've listened to her on Sirius Radio, and her voice is going to be very familiar to you. And hopefully she is going to share some things that maybe we don't know about her yet, and we're going to learn a lot about what she does and how she got involved in motorsports. Her name is Lee Spencer, and welcome to the show, Lee.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for taking time today to do that. So, Lee, for the people that don't know you, which I can't believe there are any people in racing that don't know your name or at least your voice, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, and how you got started involved in motorsports?
Well, I'd always been a sports junkie, and when we moved to Charlotte in 1992, there were really only two sports here, and that was the NBA with the Charlotte Hornets and NASCAR. And of course, this was the hub of NASCAR. My first job in Charlotte was actually working at WFNZ, which was the sports station. And at that time, sports talk was really starting to take off. And I was producing the morning show, reading the news breaks, little things of that nature. And one of the first assignments that they sent me on was to cover testing at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Well, I was very fortunate from that standpoint because when being from St. Louis, one of my hometown drivers, Rusty Wallace, just happened to be testing that day. And so, he was so accommodating, and everybody in racing, every time I went to a racetrack, the guys were so accommodating and helpful that it really became a quick tutorial in motorsports. Now, when the Charlotte Panthers came to town a couple years later, a lot of people wanted to get on the NFL bandwagon because it was the bright new shiny toy, so to speak. And having always lived in NFL cities, whether it was St. Louis or Dallas or outside of Philadelphia, I'd always been, kind of spoiled. I always, it was just another stick and ball sport to me. But racing was new to me at that time, short of going to local dirt tracks or NHRA, those kinds of things around St. Louis when they would come to town from time to time, or even the local dirt tracks. But NASCAR was, just getting at its prime back in the early 90s. And so for it to be based here and the hub to be based here and the people to be so nice and just genuine, it made it a really easy decision to stick with NASCAR rather than jump on the NFL bandwagon. So basically since, 94-ish, I've really thrown myself completely into NASCAR. From time to time, I would still cover something. If the Charlotte Observer needed like a high school game covered, or Davidson College, which is here in my backyard, I could, jump on that and do that. And that was really cool. But, pretty much for the last 25 years, it's been all NASCAR.
Okay. So yeah, being thrown into the city of NASCAR, that was a natural progression for you, as you said, and you coming from St. Louis, so I grew up near Quincy, Illinois, which I'm sure then you're familiar with that, in a little town called Warsaw, Illinois, right on the Mississippi River. So going to St. Louis to see the Cubs and the Cardinals play was kind of a big summer deal every year that we would do. And so very familiar with the St. Louis area. But that's interesting about you being there at some point.
Well,
So
if you grew up in that neck of the woods, my father was a rock and roll DJ on KC 95. My first job in broadcasting was actually my father was the news director at KDNL, which is the ABC affiliate downtown in St. Louis. And when I was 16, I used to, drive down and work with my dad a few days a week and, kind of learn the ropes from him. And, basically after that, I kind of knew where I was leaning anyway, because my dad had been on the air. He'd worked at all the top radio and TV stations in St. Louis, when I was growing up. And so I always kind of knew I was going to go into something along the lines of, journalism or broadcasting. And so, it just taking my background as far as that goes, and then, kind of moving into Charlotte was kind of like a win-win all the way around as far as the NASCAR, medium.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, it's funny how as kids we do look up and see what our parents or the people that we look up to, what they do, and we do tend to kind of follow in those footsteps. And as a 16-year-old in Warsaw, Illinois, in Hancock County, very rural community, I got an internship at a newspaper, and I learned how to type up the stories, and you used to have to run them through this glue machine and whatever, and then, let's fast forward down the road to, the 1980s, and I owned a weekly newspaper for 10 years. And then now let's fast forward to now, and I'm doing the magazine and the podcast, and you look back in your life, and I'm sure you agree, you can look back in your life and you see the steps that got you where you are today and had no idea that's where you would end up.
Well, that's true, but there's also the standpoint with the evolution of journalism and remaining relevant. And if you don't jump on the latest thing, which, like we're talking podcasts right now, and, certainly in the time of coronavirus, having a podcast or, being able to video conference the way we are, and a little disclosure, we do have stock in Zoom. So, just it's I think that staying relevant with whatever is the latest and greatest to come along is something, like you said, going from newspaper to magazine to whatever it takes to keep yourself in the game. I think it is possibly just the key to longevity in journalism or in sports journalism, because I love to ask students when I meet kids that are studying right now, whatever they're calling journalism these days, what they're what are they studying? What are they learning? What is the next greatest thing? And with you having worked at a newspaper, with me having worked for, Sporting News Magazine, which before they went online was, the oldest running magazine, sporting magazine in the country. I quickly found out that writing will take you everywhere. And even though we're, sometimes writing in 160 characters, there's still a lot that goes into just crafting, the right sentence or the right line or the right graph or how you line up those graphs. And I still think, even though we're, there's a lot put on brevity these days, that still getting to the point and perfecting that craft, no matter what they're teaching you in school, has to account for something.
Yeah, absolutely. And the kids have so many options nowadays for careers and things in every type of business. And I often You know, when I interview young gals, the most common thing that I hear them say is that they want to be the next champion, NASCAR champion, or whatever it might be. And I always encourage them to do that. But I also like to hear from them, what else are you interested in? What other careers might you have and be involved in motorsports? And yours is a great example. You've made, I'm sure, wonderful relationships with people in the motorsports industry, and you've become a well-known person as far as on the radio and the different things that you've done in the past. And oftentimes the younger gals are so focused on being that champion that they haven't thought about maybe plan B or what can go with it. And so I like to encourage them about going to school, getting the education, building those relationships. And if they can't be the next NASCAR champion, perhaps they can write about it, or they can be the accountant or the travel agent. And I just think there's so many opportunities in motorsports. What would you have to say about that?
I would, if I was looking at it from the standpoint of journalism, I would couple that with a marketing or a business degree. I think from the standpoint of women getting involved in anything right now, that it doesn't help to have it helps to have a backup plan, and it helps to know what direction you're going in. I mean, I will never forget, a pivotal part in my upbringing was, when I was in fifth grade, and my father, his background was not, journalism. His background was in engineering. And, this was at a time when engineering and broadcasting, it helped to know how all the bells and whistles, kind of how the sausage was made, right? My father, he could fix anything. And I think, back when you look at men from his generation, they really could, they had a much broader skill set than kids do today. But, I think that if you can, have that skill set and have a business background and make sure that every aspect of whatever industry you elect to go into, that it's going to give you something to land on your feet if the first choice or your first dream didn't work out. I'm not telling anybody not to chase your dreams, especially the younger you get started, the better. The more internships that you have, the better. But ultimately, I think that you have to, the more well-rounded you are, the better you're going to survive in this ever, changing world that we're living in right now. I mean, given this craziness, and you and I never anticipated seeing something in our lifetime when they would lock us in our houses.
No, never.
For a month. I mean, and we're not locked in. I mean, let's face, that's a little harsh, but still, we Americans are so spoiled. And we have everything at our fingertips. But what's the next wave going to be? If I was a broadcasting student or a journalism student right now, I would be watching the front lines of what's going on TV with a news channel right now, and seeing how these people are equipped to handle their jobs, because you're watching network anchors, people who make millions of dollars a year broadcasting from their house. And how is that happening? What tools did they have to put together to make that happen? One of the funniest things I've noticed, and this is only because I've seen my share of network television. It's fun to watch how people are putting on their makeup. Something as silly as that, right? There is, you think about all the women who have, whenever you went to a news set to do, walk on or whatever, or, they ask you your expertise, or anything along those lines. And, you would have a makeup artist come and do your makeup before you went on the air. And there's just so many little things that you see how the world in our world has changed. And, it's been kind of interesting to watch, but I'd be watching really carefully right now to see what tools are being used, how things are being done differently, and how you could prepare yourself for the future, looking at it and using it for an example, using it as a history lesson.
Oh, absolutely. And, as I sit here, as you said, we're not locked into our houses, but we feel like we have to stay home. If you want to stay healthy, then you need to stay home. And one of the things that I don't want to do is I don't want to have gone to the grocery store and perhaps picked up the bug and then gone to visit my daughter and granddaughters, and then they would get sick. That would be the worst thing for me. So we do stay in our houses. And so, yes, the TV's on, the whole time from the time I get up till the time I go to bed. And not that I'm glued to it, but it's in my ear. And what has really struck me is, we put a lot of people on a pedestal. So we'll put, a race car driver up on a pedestal, or a celebrity, or a musician, or whoever it might be, a news anchor. And then in these times when they are broadcasting from home, it makes me realize that they're no different than me. Their job is different. Their income level might be different. But when it comes down to it, they're no different than I am. They're in their home with their families. They're trying to protect the people they love. And they're finding ways to still connect with people. And I'm so glad you have stock in Zoom, because I wish I did. I wish I had stock yeah, in Zoom and in iRacing. The two companies I wish I had stock in right now. But I love Jimmy Fallon, and he started doing the Jimmy Fallon from home, and his daughters are in his face and they're making noise, and it's just so real. And I think that's the one thing that has really come to me full force, is that we are all in this together. We keep hearing that, but all those people that I thought were, I kind of held up in high regard, they're just like me. And we're all trying to survive and protect the people we love. And seeing the people that say, the good thing that's come out of this is I've had more time to spend with my kids, my wife. I've gotten some honeydews done. All these different things. It almost sometimes makes me think that, the higher power, if you believe in one, says, hey, we need to hold on here. We need to get you back to where you need to be. And I don't believe that's what caused the virus by any means, but the result of it has made so many changes in people's lives, and wow, it's going to be for a while. And I think that's just kind of, I've tried to find the good out of the bad, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, and I think that it shows in circumstances like this, it shows people's true character. I think it also gives people an opportunity that you can meet your neighbors without, being in that danger zone. You can practice social distancing, but still see the neighbors and wave to the neighbors. I mean, we're usually home 2 days a week, which is Tuesday, Wednesday. Most of my neighbors are out and about on the weekends, right? So they don't know who I am. I don't see them. And, that's something that's kind of crazy. But, you mentioned the things that, we take for granted. I mean, I think one of the coolest things to come out of this deal is the fact that you can sit back and kind of take stock of everything that you would not have done in the past. I mean, now would be a really great time, if you don't have a will, to, work on a will. We talk about that because we do travel all the time. If this is a time to check in on all my 31-year-old son, he goes, I'm hearing from people I haven't heard from in years. Because the people who are very gregarious, those are the ones that are reaching out to them, because a lot of times those are the people that don't, they're so used to being surrounded by people that when they don't have that outlet, they look in other directions for that. And so, now's the time to reach out to your elderly neighbor. Now's the time to reach out to your elderly friends. Now's the time to write that letter that you've been meaning to write, to read that book you've been reading to read, to make that recipe, although I've been doing a lot of that lately. 4 pounds later, right?
I know.
You'll get a kick out of this because you're from, my neck of the woods. I made my first dump cake in 35 years.
I forgot all about dump cakes.
Exactly. But when you start, I sat there, I had cleaned up my kitchen, and my kitchen was probably as sanitized and cleaned as it had been since we moved into this house. And I decided it was time to go through my recipe box, because I had 2 recipe boxes and I really only need 1 recipe box. So I went through and got rid of the recipes that I'm never going to make. I rewrote the ones that had, started to fall apart, except for the ones that had been written by the people of my family, because I cherish having the recipes written by them at this, juncture in my life, with them all being gone. But I was going through things. I saw a dump cake, and I'm like, this is ultimate comfort food, because I think that first week we were all kind of looking for some comfort.
Right.
So I did that, and but you can take this time and really make the most out of it. So when we do come out on the other end, we just feel more grounded, and we feel at peace, and we're maybe a little more patient with people around us that we didn't have patience for before. And I think if that is indeed what happens, then it's like you said, this will not have been for naught. And I don't know. The other thing, I forget which news program it was, but they showed, areas of the world where pollution had, they had done aerials, or, of areas where pollution had been terrible, and without people out on the roads. I think it was probably China, because we were in China in 1983, and the houses that we visited, they had dirt floors. The only people that were on the roads were the government officials. Everyone else were on bicycles. And if you have a situation like that where the pollution has been diminished significantly because people are staying in their homes, that's a good thing to me. That's a positive. And we can also get rid of the pollution in our lives and kind of cut that out. And then when we come back on the other side of this, be just in a better frame of mind to handle life moving forward.
Oh, absolutely. And, I think we can also, where social media is concerned, it's, you have 5,000 friends, and you have this and you have that. And then, when something like this happens, like you said, you maybe call somebody you haven't talked to in a long time, or, people that you should have stayed connected to, but maybe you haven't. And because of social media, you have all these people that really aren't your friends. They're just acquaintances or whatever. And, I've had people reach out to me because Michigan's been in the news, mostly because of the Detroit area, which is on the other side of the state. But I've had quite a number of people reach out to me and want to know, are we okay? And that kind of thing. And it's taking me back to my roots. So we talk about grassroots. It's taking me back to my childhood friends, my early adulthood friends, and people that I think I'm staying in touch with, but not really. And I've been sending a lot of cards. As you probably are aware, maybe not, I also have, I use send out cards, which is a great card staying in touch system that I can do from my laptop or my phone. And I've been sending even more cards than I normally do, because it's something I can still do to stay in touch with a lot of people, and it's a physical card that comes in the mail, so it's not like an email and they delete it. It's something they can sit on the counter that reminds them that I was thinking of them. So I've been trying every day to send more cards than normal, because I want people to know that even though I'm stuck in my house, I'm still thinking of them. So this whole coronavirus has changed our lives in so many ways, but not all for the bad. And so I try to find the positive in whatever's going on in my life. So Lee, maybe a good question for you is there something that you've learned in life later on that you wish you had known when you were younger?
Boy, that's a good question. I just don't, I look back and I don't have a ton of regrets. It's, I don't know. I guess I've just been really fortunate because, things have kind of fallen my way. And so it's not that I haven't had to work hard for it. And I think hard work kind of, supersedes everything else, because I think I'd rather be the B student that works harder for something than be the A student that didn't apply myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, from that standpoint, I really don't have any regrets. I wanted to have my kids early so I could, work later in life, and I did that. And so everything has really fallen into place. I just don't, I have no regrets. I really don't. I mean, and, I've traveled quite a bit, which I'm very, I've been very blessed that way. I don't know. I'm just, I haven't really stumbled on anything that said, gee, I wish I would have done this, that, or the other, because, I think, life has been good.
That's good to hear, because one of the things, it's funny that you say no regrets. It's one of the things that every so often, if you follow me on social media, you'll see me say hashtag no regrets, because it's a phrase that I've used for a number of years, probably almost 10 years, honestly. And because I had a situation in my family where someone had passed away, and one of the family members had a lot of regrets, and I didn't. I always felt like in that situation I had done everything that I felt I could and should and wanted to do, and I had no regrets. And I've tried to, not to say I've not made a lot of mistakes in my life, we all make mistakes, but in the end, when I look at the people that I care about and the things that I'm doing, hashtag no regrets, and that's a great thing. So Lee, why don't you tell us a little bit about, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if you learn from those mistakes, though, then, if you take it and turn it around, okay, I wish I would not have done that. But if you learn from it and the next time you didn't repeat that, I think that's probably, do I regret having that extra sliver of pie last night? Probably, but I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Absolutely. When we talk about that, I'll share a little story. My mom passed away from leukemia. She got sick, and 25 days later we lost her. Wow. And on one of the very, very last nights before she took a turn for the worse, she loved her desserts, Lee. She loved her cookies. She was a farmer's wife. She baked a lot, and she was the best pie maker ever. And she was not joking, but said, I've exercised, I've done all the things I should do, I've eaten right. And she says, now I wish I'd have had that extra piece of pie. And so, so sometimes in our family, we'll say, let's eat dessert first in honor of her, because she would stand over the kitchen sink to eat her cookies, because she said that way there was no evidence of how many she had eaten. And she was just a wonderful person. And so we think about that when we talk about eating our extra piece of pie. So why don't you share with us, with the listeners, a little bit about your job and what you do, and explain that a little bit more.
Well, my job's kind of changed. I talked about just staying relevant with the job because, when I started working, when we moved to North Carolina in 92, my kids were still little. So I was juggling, being a mom and with whatever job I could bring into whatever job I added, because I would do a multitude of jobs because certain time frames, it just worked better. And so, um, for a while, I mean, the Cush job was kind of being at Sporting News because I was the first female columnist that News had. And I was also the very first NASCAR columnist. So it was kind of like pioneering two different things at once. But, back then I was responsible for one column a week. Well, you think about that. Okay, this is 2001, and all you had to do was put together one column for the entire week. Well, we kept telling the bosses at Sporting News, things are changing. News is really important. We need to get news up on the internet, and it may change. This may be one, two, three things a week, and it was like they weren't ready to make that kind of commitment. And over the 7 years I was there, that changed. Once I got to Fox, it was a whole different animal because they had the TV element, they had the radio element. Sporting News had Sporting News Radio. That they incorporated that in the latter part of my time there. But by the time I got to, well, even at the end of Sporting News, I was doing stuff for Fox Sports. I was doing TV on the weekend. They would do little vignettes from the racetrack with a show called Around the Track that they did out of the Atlanta affiliate. So that kind of changed things. But, fast forward to what I'm doing now with Racing Boys. They have their own radio network, and they did, both regular terrestrial radio, for 25 years. And people might not have heard of them other from the part of, if you're into dirt track racing and you are familiar with the Chili Bowl Nationals in Tulsa, they've had the broadcast rights to Chili Bowl, forever. I mean, it just seems, forever. But so, we do, after I left Motorsports, they basically said, why don't you come and work with us? You can make your own hours, you can do your own things. So this is kind of like my golden years gig, I would say, because I write when I want to write, I write what I want to write. I mean, all the years that I was out there pounding the pavement and, working 24/7, Racing Boys has kind of given me my own vehicle. And if I want to do a podcast, I do a podcast. If, it's
Right.
I look at it from the standpoint of I invested a lot of time and effort over the years to, break every story I could get my hands on, only now to sit back and be able to write columns, be able to write features, be able to do what I want on my terms. And, it goes back to the whole thing. I'm just blessed. I mean, I feel so lucky that I'm at a point in my career where I don't have to kill myself. And my husband writes for the NASCAR Wire Service, which is something that started back when we were still at Sporting News. And Sporting News, NASCAR didn't feel like they were being well served by the Associated Press. And so they came up with their own wire service. And they went to Sporting News because we were a partner of theirs at the time to put together the wire service. And I asked my husband, I said, hey, come out of journalism retirement and do this with us. And so he's been doing it ever since. And, which is great because now, we work on our own terms. We travel together. Our kids are grown. It's just turned into a win-win. And I don't know how much longer I want to do this, but And I got to tell you, not being on the road every week, it doesn't suck. So,
I'm sure.
yeah,
I'm sure.
I just, to have this opportunity to kind of, travel together and see the country together and hang out with my best friend. I mean, what more could I ask for?
Yeah.
Oh, and there's also racing, It's
Exactly. That's the byproduct that you get to go to the races and enjoy something
well,
that you love. Yeah.
and you were mentioning about coronavirus, with the COVID-19 pandemic. Another bonus that has come out of all of this is, you mentioned iRacing. NASCAR and all racing in general has now taken center stage. You think about the World of Outlaws. I mean, it's one of the best shows going. They call it the greatest show on dirt because it is. And so
Right.
now they're finally getting an opportunity to be on Big Fox. I mean, who would have thought 6 months ago we would be talking about the World of Outlaws on Fox? Who would have thought that you'd be, watching IndyCar, virtual IndyCar races on NBC? I mean, it's right now we're the only show in town, and
Uh-huh.
it is just a spectacular opportunity. And every sports, tour right now, every motorsports tour right now needs to be making the most out of this time and present itself in the best damn light it can, so that when life does get back to normal, people have had the opportunity to see this and say, damn, that's exciting. I want to see more of that. And, hopefully we'll all benefit from it down the road.
Oh, absolutely. Because I've had some conversations with some people that, first of all, I'm a woman and I love racing. So, they think that's kind of weird. Why isn't it your husband that loves all the sports? No, it's me that always has the sports on television, And so I've had some friends reach out and say, hey, what do you think about the iRacing thing? And I've had to say, I love it because it gives me my fill for the week, if you will, of missing being at the racetrack or watching it on television. And we're the only sport that's able to do it. The rest of the NBA, the Madden football, all that, it's a good video game, but it's not true to life.
Doesn't translate well.
No.
Right.
And the iRacing really looks so real. And I listened to Dale Jr.'s podcast. He's one of my favorites, I have to say. And he's been iRacing for quite a number of years. But last night I listened to the interview he had with Kyle Busch, and it was so interesting to listen to them talk about iRacing and how you learn about it and everything. And I just think, yes, we're at the forefront of all the sports because nobody else is doing anything. And racing has a an image around it, and people who don't really know think that we're a bunch of rednecks and beer drinking, cussing, whatever. And they can find out that no, we're not that. And when they see the races on TV, the iRacing, and how exciting it is, and to think that in real life it's even more exciting because you can't go to the pits and get a reset and get a brand new car, and there's so many things that are cool about the iRacing that I hope we get on the other side of all this. We get some new fans to come out and give it a try in person. That's one of my goals for the summer. Was I have a bunch of events scheduled at NASCAR races geared towards women. And so my first one is canceled at Richmond. My second one is canceled at Martinsville or rescheduled, I hope. And so we go down the line, because one of the things that I want is I want to try to get people to the racetrack that have never been there, especially women, to see that racing is a sport for women to be included. So hopefully on the other side of all this, we'll get to have those events and have that be able to be brought to the women who maybe haven't had a chance to see a race in person. So I'm excited about that happening at some point. But for now, we at least have something that we can look forward to. And the iRacing, I talked to a guy yesterday from there. They just partnered with us, honestly, too. And, they're very busy, obviously, because it's another company I wish I had stock in, but so thankful that we have that to watch.
Oh, absolutely. And I've got to say, uh, when I first watched the World of Outlaws on Dirt Vision, they had a race at Volusia. It was so real. It was spooky. And then we watched the IndyCar race from Watkins Glen, and there were parts of the Watkins Glen circuit that we didn't even know existed, and we've been around the track in a pace car, but it is so real and so true to life that it was just it was really spectacular. Just loved it. And I think that NASCAR made a huge jump from where they televised the first Homestead race to the last race that they ran at Texas. And I expect Bristol to be even better. And I will tune in and watch World of Outlaws tonight. I will, tune in and watch IndyCar and the NASCAR race this weekend. And I'm just really, as I explained to somebody today, those 2 hours that we spend watching NASCAR on Sunday, it's almost like getting the gang back together, and it's almost it become a communal type feel to it, because you're so used to being around that crazy circus that's become your family after 25 years, that it's almost like normal that you should be with these people on a Sunday, which is strange, having grown up and gone to my grandmother's house every Sunday, growing up as a kid, but now it's like you're always at a racetrack on a Sunday. And it's going to be really hard once everything gets back up and rolling to, give up this, very interesting life that we're living right now, because, when you're on autopilot all the time, you don't feel it. And I think it's going to be tremendously different once we get back to whatever the new normal is.
Well, and obviously for this year at least, when once we are able to go back to race, it's going to be wild and crazy, because I truly think they're going to try to make up a lot of the races if they're able. And so instead of it being one, a truck and a cup race, it might be a doubleheader weekend. And so now we're going to be there longer and that. But I don't know what the new normal is going to look like, but I know that I'm going to find my way in whatever that is, and I'm going to still love racing and still be a part of it. And so I'll just figure that out when the time comes. I don't worry about it because I can't do anything about it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I just know that I'm going to try to stay in touch with people. I'm going to reach out to people like you that, you're on a busy schedule. It would have been hard to get a podcast scheduled with you prior, but now that we're confined to the house, we all have a little more time. And that's the positive that I'm taking away from this. So
absolutely.
So Lee, is there anything that I haven't asked you about or we haven't talked about that you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
No, I think we've covered a wide range of topics, but I commend you for trying to get women to the racetrack, because I think they'll have a brand new appreciation for racing, because nothing compares to the actual product itself on the racetrack, to feel the cars. I mean, there's no feeling like sitting in the press box at Talladega when those 40 cars come barreling down the front stretch and the whole press box shakes. When you hear the noise, when you smell the cars, when you hear the cars, when you see the cars, when you feel the cars, nothing nothing that they can do, even with iRacing, and as amazing as that product is, but nothing compares to actually being at the racetrack. And I think once you get your ladies to the racetrack, they'll get hooked.
Absolutely. There was there was a group, my friend Lori lives in Arizona, and she brought a group from her neighborhood, about 50 some people, to the races. They had like an excursion.
Wow.
25 of them bought infield passes to come into the infield, and I had set up a time for her to take them to talk to my friend Liz, who's a tire specialist for Daniel Suarez. She used to be with Chris Buescher. So she talked to them a little bit, you know, at their pit box about what she does and different things about the racing. And then Lori's husband, Charlie, is a fireman at Phoenix for their racetrack. So then we went there, and I kind of interviewed him, and he talked to the people. And those people that went to the infield, that saw the behind the scenes, that heard about what it takes to put a car on the track, every one of those people told her they're coming back in November, because it just changes your perspective. If I always encourage people to go to the races and sit in the grandstand, and that's great. But I also encourage them to go to the pits at least once, go to the infield, get a taste of what it looks like at the garages, whatever experience you're able to do, because I think a lot of people that go to the racetrack sit down in their seat, they watch the race, and they don't think a whole lot about what it takes, both people-wise, talent, the cost of putting those cars on the track. And when you go to the infield, or you're in the infield like you and I usually are, then we kind of take that for granted. We know about that. And that's the thing, I think, if I can get women to the track and get them to the infield where they can see what it's really all about, they'll come back. I have no doubt.
Well, the way I keep in touch with, not taking that for granted is I do. There's a woman who she's got a long relationship on the IndyCar side, and I've been doing pit tours for her for several years, and I do them at Indy and I do them at Auto Club Speedway, and the same people come back every year. We get new ones, but the same people come back because they love the tours.
Right.
Because as a kid, with my dad being a DJ, a rock and roll DJ, the feeling of going backstage at a rock concert is something that is behind the scenes that the normal person doesn't get to do. So my philosophy of taking people on pit tours is to take them backstage and to show them through my eyes what the normal fan does not get to see leading up to the show. And so I love doing that when I get the opportunity to do, and the fans that I work with for Auto Club Speedway, it's a really high clientele. It's the top fans, and they pay a premium to do this out of the Richter Club, and but they are very savvy when it comes to the sport, and they're so not only are they fans that diehard fans, they know everything. And so the fact that I can take them into a transporter or into somebody's garage stall and give them that kind of behind the scenes look is very valuable, not just to them, but it is to me, because it helps keep me grounded into what perhaps the fans want to know and read in the coming days, weeks, months.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, we're gonna try to do a little more of that when we do our events at the track. We're gonna try to fit in a little bit more of the background tour. So that's part of what our plans are. So I'm excited about that when I get to do it, when we can get started. So it'll be soon. We're all praying for that, and so I know you agree with me when we say we pray for everyone out there that's listening to stay home, stay safe, keep your family safe, do what you're supposed to be doing, and let's get through this sooner than later, because we all want to get back to what normal, whatever normal is for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Lee, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today. I've really enjoyed speaking with you. We haven't met in person yet, but we will, because we'll be at the track at some point this year, and we'll make a point of getting together and meeting face to face. But until that time, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Take care of yourself and your family, and I'll see you at the track.
Super. Thanks for your time, Melinda.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Racing Girls Rock Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at International Women's Motorsports Association, or on Instagram and Twitter at the IWMA Nation. And if you know someone that should be on our show, drop us an email at iwmanation@gmail.com.